Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Fast U4. Brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. Hey, bike racing on the weekend. And I won, and it was good. Let me tell you all about it. Tell you coaching tip of the week and what I learned from that race. We're going to talk about what grinds my gears. It's something that's been annoying all of you. Yep, that's right. And hopefully I'll give you some answers. We'll find out. An answer to a problem you're all having, pretty much 90% of you. I'll tell you what it is, and we'll look ahead to next week's racing. What's coming up is probably, for spring, the first or second most important race between now and next year. A lot of you are doing it, so let me tell you about it. Alright, yesterday's race, Wellington Masters Cycling Club hosting a graded road race on the road that goes from Muttonborough out towards Cape Palliser, Lake Ferry Road. It's pretty much 90% of this was one big long road with a whole lot of rollers. But the reason it's good that we did this is because that constitutes most of what is next week's big race, the North Island Team Series Race 2 that I'll talk about in a minute. So this race is the same as what that course is going to be. It's about the same as 85% of it. There's a little bit tacked on next week. So if you're doing that race, it will be good to know about this course. It will help you a lot. There's some interesting things about it actually, and different to what meets the eye. So starting at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, okay conditions, a little overcast, not really wet, not much wind, and a nice, 12 to 15 degrees or something like that. So I'll take that all day long. Decent field came across the hill, started out in the A grade. Had a total time of this race of 1 hour 37 minutes. Distance of 62.7 kilometers by the looks of it. Only a little bit of climbing, 274 meters, but I'll tell you something about that in a minute that's worth knowing. That's strange. Left-right balance of 49.51 for me yesterday, which is absolutely fine. We had an average power of 299. So normalized to 334. Most of that was in a relatively short period of time. It was a tale of two halves this race. Average cadence 94, high-ish for me. Pretty much in the sweet spot, heart rate 151. So that, let's talk about that effective power for a second. And by the way, if you're watching the screen, you'll notice that the data recording, at least for all the power and stuff, stops at about 2/3 of the way through the race. Unfortunately, my Garmin ran out of memory. Now, I found out why that is. It's not actually for quite the reasons that you might assume. It's not because a whole lot of files get backed up. I figured out how to fix it. It's kind of a settings issue, and I'll tell you about how to fix it in a minute, along with some other Garmin related matters that some of you are probably having. But anyway, that's why the line looks funky. So that data only encompasses that first 2/3 of the race. But we started out, when you start coming south, southeast, southwest, down this course, it is and seems pretty flat. I mean, it's flattish, there's sort of some rollers, but it doesn't really do much. And for the first, quarter of this race, if I highlight that, we were trotting along at a very easy pace. In fact, until I kind of lit it up there, look at that, we had average power of 251. Still honking along pretty quick, 43k an hour because of a minor tailwind and the group working together, but pretty slow. Alright, what happened was on one of the first decent little rollers, I lit it up and went off the front. And for this period here, from about 20 to, I don't know, close to 30 minutes, I was off the front on my lonesome, putting out an average of 350 watts, tapping it along just where my sort of threshold flat power is roughly. Trying to be a little conservative because I knew that if I was successful it was going to be a long day in the saddle off the front for me. I kept looking around and I have the feeling the runch was noting my exuberance and basically keeping me pegged. I reduced the power a bit, but couldn't get anywhere. They saw they were coming and saw the writing on the wall. Went back to the bunch. We sat there for a while until the next kind of main part of the course is a left turn you take just after Paranoa, which is a lake, goes out towards Cape Palliser, and there is immediately on your left a decent first climb. So let's have a look at this because it's a really important feature of this course next week as well as today. If I zoom in here, the climb is not long. From where it starts going up to where it kind of flattens off, it's less than a minute. But it's a grade of only climb 25 meters, 8.8%. So it's actually reasonably steepish in places. Yesterday, as I think will happen next weekend, the field was shattered on there. I lit it up off the front pretty hard, holding 482 watts, the best part of a minute there, to see if I could break the field. I successfully did, and things got pretty strung out. The turnaround was only about another minute or two riding after that. You can see a turn, about 1 minute of riding. And the riders who were able to come over to my wheel were Ollie Ferry and Hugh Buke. From there, we turned, headed back down pretty quick, and onto the road where we came, Lake Ferry Road, and headed back up northeast. So, me, Hugh, and Ollie worked together all the rest of the way back. Now, you might think, by looking at the course profile, that it's flat or rolling-ish, but it's one of those things where, like the end of North Island Round 3, it kind of seems hillier on the way back. In other words, the rollers are a little steeper, seem a little longer, and it's worth keeping that in mind. It's more than likely to be a head crosswind on that leg as well. So the return leg up the road there is sort of quite long. I mean, in terms of actual time from the turn back, it took us another, 10 minutes extra or something like that, 50 minutes to go back, whereas it only took us at much lower power 46 minutes. So that's the best part of 5 minutes on the way back, partly due to the headwind, and it will usually be a headwind, partly due to the rollers, and that's at a much higher, would have been at a much higher power. So worthwhile remembering that. And as far as this race played out, Hugh wasn't able to take many turns on the front. Ollie was riding pretty well, and Ollie was totally doing the move where You come through, and even though you're a bit shagged out, you blimmin' well go on the front and you take as good a turn as you can. Even if your turns aren't that strong, you do your job, and that is, to me, that is quality riding. Man, like that's really cool. It's really good, and ultimately as a group we've probably travelled faster down the road because of it. Even Hube, who was totally knackered, tried a few times, and in fact an interesting thing happened, and maybe this is a good lesson, is that Hube kind of was pretty shagged out and was barely holding on to Ollie and I in the early stages, and he kind of seemed to recover and get stronger and stronger and stronger, and as he did, he came through and took better and better turns as time went on. So not only is that a good thing to do, it's interesting that you can recover to that degree. Never kind of assume that you're toast if there's one maybe less in it. Just hold on if you can. I mean, he was telling us he wasn't feeling that great and couldn't take that many turns, and you know what, it's fine. That's totally fine. So interesting to see someone's strength come back like that, which is really good. The way it played out was we came through the final kilometre. Ollie and I still pulling some pretty decent turns. We couldn't quite tell how far back the bunch was, so we wanted to keep it pretty fast. Okay, so then there was a tactical matter where I am known for my sprinting in the same way the Catholic Church, no, I won't make that joke, but it's not good, and everyone is aware of that. So there's a problem where I don't really want to get caught by the bunch, and I don't really want to have to sprint someone with 50 to 100 metres to go. So I made the decision to go a little earlier with about 500, and my little move was, because I knew Hobe was unlikely to sprint and was the weaker of us, I do this move I've seen guys do where you put the weaker person between you and the stronger person. Okay, so you got me, I'm on, Ollie's just come off the front in this turn, he's pulling off to the right, there's the wind's coming from the right, and Hobe is kind of coming through for a turn. So then on the opposite side, on the inside, the gutter side of the road, that's where I take my, that's where I blow my load, and I don't have any power data to show you because of the aforementioned Garmin issues, but suffice to say, laid down the hammer as well as I could do at about 400 maybe to go. Now the benefit of that is, of course, the other person's falling back, so they have to accelerate for one. They have to come further over the road because they're on the other side. They have to accelerate, and potentially the other person sort of gets in their way, not intentionally or anything like that. For a second, Hobe is kind of between us, so it's not like Ollie can just sort of dive over and immediately onto my wheel. So I'm trying to play those angles. Interestingly, my legs, I didn't have a massage last week, kind of started to cramp a bit at that point. My quads, this little teardrop muscle in the bottom inside of your quads, and they started to get a bit crampy. They held up just fine, thanks to the tailwind, I think, sodium in the tailwind, and I was able to just sit back down in a nice, powerful position, pop out about 500 watts for 30 seconds or so, and take the win, followed by Ollie Ferry and Hobe taking a fine bronze. So that was the story of the race. The things I'd take out of it are that going down south on the first leg, yeah, I don't know if I'd be attacking too much there again. It's too, if there's a tailwind there, it's too easy for that bunch to just kind of rally a bit and peg you out. The second thing is that the little climb after the turn is probably the most important bit of this course, and the next week's course. And also, third thing is the rollers on the way back, surprisingly long. In fact, some of them felt about the same difficulty probably were, even though they don't look on paper as the aforementioned climb for the turn. So remember that there's lots of opportunities in the second half of this race if you are strong. That's what I think. Alright, so thank you Wellington Master Cycling Club for yet another excellent organised race. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all the guys coming out. Alright, so apart from that stuff, let's talk about the thing that's probably pissing off 90% of you at the moment, namely your Garmin Edge 520. So this may apply to other Garmin models, I think it does, but I know it applies to the 500s, so we'll talk about that. So on your, like a little square budgie, you have your Garmin perched on your handlebar, and in the last month what you've probably noticed is that the units on the distance keep changing from the new, is that what they call statute, to imperial. They changed from the old style, the new style, kilometres, which is what we all use because we're not savages, to miles. And what happens is you go, oh, that's strange. You'll go to your settings, you'll change it, and then lo and behold, the next ride, you'll be exceedingly pissed off to notice it's changed back to miles again, and so on and so on. Why does it matter? Well, it kind of matters because if you've got, say, like I do, distances and stuff written on your stem, well, it's not very useful if it suddenly changes units. So, how do you fix it? Well, I think I've fixed it this morning. I think what's going on is you can't upload updates, firmware updates onto your Garmin because your memory is full. Your memory is full not because of a whole lot of rides on it, but because of some other files that are being stored. Now, I don't pretend to know the intricacies of this, but if you Google Garmin 520 memory full or something like that, you'll find one of the first or second hit there is a forum, and it's basically about 3 files or groups of files you want to delete. I can't remember the names, so I won't try, but they're not fit files or something like that, like the normal ride files. I think they're files where they actually contain map images or something like that, and obviously they're quite big. That's taking room. So I went from having basically no room left on my data, I deleted these 3 files, to having, I don't know, maybe 90% space left. So that's pretty dramatic. So I noticed that I've fixed the miles/kilometres issue now since I fixed the memory and connected to Garmin Connect, and it seems fine. However, it's not really clear to me 100% if my firmware is up to date. It says that it is. If not, you're supposed to log into now something else called Garmin, the other Garmin thing, Garmin Mobile, Garmin whatever it is that goes on your device, and update it through the Bluetooth on that. Why you would need to do that when it's plugged into your device and you're already on Garmin Connect, I don't know. If you do, I don't know. So, 2 things here. What grinds my gears, number 1, the fact that the issue happens in the first place. It's hard to fix, and it's not through the usual conventional methods. By deleting your fit files, well, I think we've ascertained how to free up the memory. That's annoying. Secondly, the fix is not really that obvious. Like, I would delete those. I'd delete those files. I would go into my Garmin Connect settings. Make sure that your settings are on kilometres as well. So that's covered. Save that. When you do that, you'll notice it prompts you to do this thing where you should connect via Bluetooth to your Garmin Express. I think that's what I was referring to. Now, when I tried to do that, after resets, after resetting laptops, after all that, it gives me an error every time saying that it's not working. Contact our help desk, which is probably going to be about as useful as urinating in the wind on an electric fence, and about as pleasant. So I'm never going to do that. I'll just keep trying it. But it does say that the firmware is, I think, 10.1 or something, which is supposedly up to date. so I shouldn't have any more problems. And I notice when I switch it on now, we are back to kilometers, not miles. So I think if you I think there's one takeaway: make the room on the device by deleting those weird files, and I think the rest, when it connects, as long as the units are set correctly in Garmin Connect, will fix itself. So that is what grinds my gears. It's immensely annoying, and I hope Garmin fixes this hopeless ecosystem that they have in place. They've kind of decided to go down the iTunes ecosystem kind of route, and it sucks massive ass, and it doesn't work, and everyone hates it. And Garmin, remember how Nokia was, you know, the big mobile phone people in the early 2000s? Yeah, and there was a thing called a BlackBerry. Remember how that was everything? And everyone had one, and everyone thought that was the big thing. No one ever got anything else. Then iPhones came along, and now Nokia and BlackBerries basically don't exist. Well, I hope you're taking note of the massive amounts of annoyance out there with your products and your backup service. And if an iPhone version of Garmin comes along and completely savages you and your business, I hope there's a lesson in that for you. Alright, moving on. Next week. Oh, one other thing. If you're going to go and watch something on the TV, it just occurred to me the other day, I don't know how to watch TV. I can't watch television anymore, not only because of the constant communist indoctrination on communist TV/TVNZ, but so I gave up on it, and I just got to the point where I literally don't know how to watch TV. I think you need a box, like a Freeview box or something, and you plug it in. I think that's how one watches TV. I know you can sort of get it through the website and stream it, but I don't know if it's live or what. So I honestly don't know or care how to watch TV. But you probably have a thing called the Netflix, because you're not insane. So from time to time you probably watch, like I do, replays of old Tour de France on YouTube and Netflix. Now on the Netflix you want to go and find a thing called Icarus. It's Icarus, and what Icarus is a documentary by a guy called Brian Fogel, and it is fascinating. Also, if you're into podcasts, listen to one of the latest ones by this guy, Joe Rogan. There's an interview with Mr. Fogel, and the nuts and bolts of it are that he started working with a Russian sports scientist who ironically worked for the Russian anti-doping authorities in preparing for a big amateur race called the Haute Route, which is something like a week-long sufferfest in the French Alps, typically won by a guy called Peter Pauly, who is famous for being the cycling spokesperson for Cycling Thailand or something like that. And any inferences you draw from that are probably entirely correct, and I won't say what they are. Anyway, he wanted to do well. He raced it 2 years in a row. Year 1 clean, and year 2 with the help of the Russian sports scientist and gargantuan quantities of illicit substances. Now, that actually didn't really go to plan because he, I think, crashed and was sick or something like that. Didn't do that well. Certainly the drugs worked and all that, but the second kind of half of the documentary merged into something completely different, which was the story of getting this Russian sports scientist out of Russia back to the USA after, I think, the Sochi Olympics, and an investigation into the fraudulent activities of the Russian anti-doping authorities, namely massive doping program for Russian athletes. And all recent Olympics is how that was done, the nuts and bolts of how bottles were open. You know, if you go to an anti-doping control, I've done this, they give you these weird little bottles that are only closable. If you try to open them, it destroys them. I mean, one little interesting tidbit was that the Russian anti-doping authorities figured out like tools and ways and methods to actually open these sample bottles without destroying them, which, you know, considering, I think there's one thing to take away from that, which is that big money and government interest in sports fraud in Russia will actually beat Swiss engineering at its best. And if there's anything that's terrifying, it's beating the Swiss or the Germans at anything engineering related. You know you're in trouble at that point. So there's a long story about that half of it. He was taken out of Russia because he was going to be investigated and probably killed by the Russian KGB. It goes on and on and on and on, very, very, very deep. So if you would like to nerd out tonight on a story of doping, its effects, and then the story of the huge fraudulent Russian doping program, government doping program in the last 20 years, Icarus, it's the one for you. Eye-opening it is, and if you're a podcast guy, let's go listen to Joe Rogan on Icarus. It's pretty cool. The guy gets on his political high horse from time to time, but you can fast forward those bits. The actual parts about doping are very, very interesting. Alright, next race, North Island Team Series 2. Now, as I've kind of talked about this already, because the course is here, if you're looking at the screen, it's kind of the same as what we did, plus a little extra. So in the elite grade, they actually head all the way down towards Cape Palliser, which is a beautiful, well, on a nice day it's a beautiful area. On a terrible day it's awful. Be careful on, if you can see the screen, there's a climb which the masters finish at the top of, but the elites go down. Be careful, don't die. The road is bad. It's not bad in the sense of like gravelly and stuff, it's bad in that it's just been so chopped up by earth movement and, I don't know, wind and waves and stuff. It's potholes and kind of waves in the tarmac, so be careful. The actual road along the coast is, yeah, it's half decent. So the Masters, we're going to head out exactly the same as all the stuff I talked about in the race on the weekend. We're going to head up to here, if you're looking at the screen. Now, that leaves us only about an extra 5k's each way to the top of what appears to be a decent climb. So from the point where we finished yesterday's race till the turnaround point, the halfway point of, so that from the halfway, from the turnaround point of yesterday's race to the turnaround point of next week's race is only an extra 5k's or so, but it looks on paper like it's a big climb, and it kind of is and it kind of isn't. It's one of these things where you look at topographically at something, and because of the scale and that, it looks bigger than it is. It's more of it's certainly a climb, but it almost seems like a false flat in places, and the wind can be strong, probably crosswind there, maybe even could even be a bit of a tailwind up, probably a headwind back, and it's not nearly as bad as it looks. Having said that, it will be potentially decisive because of the climb, as we talked about just before that. So I think, if there's anything, that's the part, say from the Cape Palliser turn, the lefty turn, to the turnaround at the top of the climb, and then the piece coming back. That's the part where you really need to bite the stem and be on it, I think. You'll either have it or you won't. Winds haven't been strong this year, so I don't know if it will be next week, but in this part of the world it's definitely a major consideration. So that's really the only new thing to say about it. From when we rode it, I think it goes up, and there is a small descent to the turnaround, but it's not that big, not that steep. There's nothing really technical or other issues to worry about. And as far as coming back, we already talked about that finish. We'll be in the same place, and it's just a big, wide open kind of sprint finish. So if you're off the group, you might want to pick a good wheel, because especially into a headwind and it opens up early, if you pick a good wheel, it could go well for you and a bunch gallop. It's next week's race. Looking forward to it. Special shout out to Helen Monster for winning the South Island Time Trial Championship Masters Games yesterday. That was a great effort, producing record power. Now has a disc wheel, record low drag. Things are looking good for the Monster. Alright, that is next week's race. I will leave it there. As always, support to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa, and Capital Cycles. If you would like a coaching plan from me, you can go to fitlab.co.nz. You can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz. I will see you on the weekend. Thanks for watching/listening to Fast You Fall, brought to you by FitLab, Capital Cycles, Tailwind Nutrition, and Biomaxa. If you'd like to get in touch for a coaching program or testing, you can get hold of me, steve@fitlab.co.nz. Go to fitlab.co.nz. Talk soon, guys.